afternoon. Thank you and welcome. We're glad that you can join us today for today's webinar, Cooking for a Lifetime of Cancer Prevention, Colorectal Cancer. And now I'm going to introduce you to our team. I am Felicia Marable-Williams, along with Andrea Nicolai, Joshua Payne, Hillary McMichael, Amber Daniels, Patrick Zayas, Suzanne Holloway, Sherry Bresson, Tricia Aldridge, Charlie Whitten, Wanda Adorno, and Melissa Valaro. We want you to know that the University of Florida is an equal opportunity provider. And along with our disclosure statement, the information provided on cancer today is intended for educational purposes only. It doesn't address every variable relevant to an individual's unique situation. And while we strive to offer evidence-based content, this is not medical advice. So please consult your healthcare provider for personalized guidance. We're going to cover 4 topics today. The first, colorectal cancer statistics, resources for screenings, the American Cancer Society guidelines and nutrition on nutrition and physical activity, and how to apply guidelines to real life. It is extremely unfortunate, but each year more than 8 million people die from cancer worldwide. And cancers are the second leading cause of death in the United States, only behind heart disease. But breast cancer, cervical cancer, colorectal cancer are very common and at least in part preventable through risk reduction. Colorectal cancer in Florida. It's estimated that in this year, 2026, there are going to be almost 13,000 new cases of colorectal cancer. And it's also estimated that 4,240 people, unfortunately, will die in 2026 here in Florida from colorectal cancer. And colorectal cancer is number 3 in Florida regarding cause of death of cancer. Now, this chart, it also shows what I just talked about, but in addition, it shows other cancers here in Florida, estimated new cases and estimated number of deaths for 2026. But again, we're focusing on colorectal cancer. Talking about up-to-date screening rates among adults 45 and older, the Florida colorectal cancer screening rate is 66%, while the U.S. rate is 69%. Now, the Healthy People 2030 goal for colorectal cancer screenings is we want to increase that in adults 45 to 75 by another 7%. So at least 73% of people are being screened. So being screened is extremely important, and that's another reason why we are here talking about this timely topic today. Not only to mention that March is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And next, Charlie is going to talk to you about what you should do about colorectal cancer.
Thank you, Felicia. I'm going to share some important things for you to know regarding causes as well as the costs that are associated with colorectal cancer. So when we talk about cancer, it's important to start by understanding that it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. In many cases, there are known contributing factors. Some causes are environmental, things like radiation exposure or certain chemicals. Some are genetic, meaning inherited mutations that can increase risk. And many are lifestyle related. Lifestyle factors might include your alcohol consumption, smoking, or diet. These are areas where prevention efforts can truly make a difference. While we can't change our genetics, we can influence many daily behaviors that impact our long-term risk. Now let's talk about how cancer actually develops. Cancer begins with damage to body cells. This damage can occur from normal wear and tear, those environmental exposures, or our lifestyle factors. The key thing to understand here is usually the body can repair this damage. Our cells have built-in repair mechanisms, and when damage is fixed properly, there is no cancer. That's why you see this arrow here pointing to no cancer. I think if we click one more time, there we go. However, if the damage is not repaired correctly, abnormal cells can begin to grow. Over time, this can form a tumor. And if those abnormal cells continue to grow uncontrollably and invade surrounding tissues, that's when we call it cancer. And in some cases, that cancer can spread to other parts of the body. Colorectal cancer is cancer of the large intestine, which is the colon and the rectum. So when we say colorectal, that's really what we're really talking about those two areas together. One important thing to know is that colorectal cancer usually does not start overnight. Most cases develop over time from precancerous polyps. Polyps are small growths that can form inside the lining of the colon or rectum. Most polyps are not cancer at first, but some types can slowly change and become cancer if they're not found and removed. That's why screening is such a big deal with colorectal cancer, because a colonoscopy can actually find these polyps early and remove them before they turn into cancer. So it's possible to have no symptoms and still have polyps or even cancer cells that are developing in the colon or rectum. That's why screening is so critical. Screening does not wait for symptoms. It is designed to detect polyps before they turn into cancer or to catch cancer at an early stage when treatment is most effective. Colorectal cancer might not cause symptoms right away, but if it does, these could be some of the symptoms. So a change in bowel habits, such as diarrhea, constipation, or narrowing of the stool that lasts for more than a few days. A feeling that you need to have a bowel movement that is not relieved by having one. Rectal bleeding with bright red blood. Blood in the stool, which may make the stool look dark. Cramping or abdominal pain. Weakness and fatigue, and unintended weight loss. Colorectal cancers can often bleed into the digestive tract. Sometimes the blood can be seen in the stool or make it look darker, but often the stool looks normal. But over time, the blood loss can build up and can lead to red blood cell counts. Sometimes the first sign of colorectal cancer is a blood test showing a low red blood cell count. Many of these symptoms can be caused by conditions other than colorectal cancer, such as infection, hemorrhoids, or irritable bowel syndrome. Still, if you have any of these problems, it's important to see your doctor right away so that the cause can be found and treated if needed. So even when two people have the same cancer diagnosis, their experiences can be completely different based on their resources and the kind of support that they have. Research consistently shows that certain factors influence cancer diagnosis, treatment, survival, and financial hardship for individuals and their families. Some of those factors might include age, because older adults may be on a fixed income, while younger adults may be juggling work and childcare. Race and ethnicity, which can connect to access to care, screening, and differences in healthcare equality. Sexual orientation, because some groups face barriers related to healthcare access and trust. Health insurance status, which is one of the biggest drivers of out-of-pocket costs. It also depends on things like family income, where you live, and the type of cancer, because some cancers will require more expensive treatment and longer-term care. And this is where your local extension office really plays a big role. We're here to help you learn about prevention, find reliable screening information, and connect you to community resources. So this chart shows the insurance type for colorectal cancer survivors ages 18 to 64. Most survivors in this age group have private insurance, which is making up about 60%. After that, about 22% have Medicaid or other public insurance. A smaller portion will fall into the other coverage category at about 9.5%, and about 8.5% are uninsured. The reason this matters is that insurance coverage costs affect access to screening, follow-up testing, treatment, and survivorship care. Even though screening is recommended and can help catch colorectal cancer early, access is not always equal. So this graph highlights something that a lot of people do not think about until it affects them: the financial cost of cancer. For adults ages 18 to 64, the average annual out-of-pocket expense for colon cancer survivors were about $2,123 per year. For comparison, people with no cancer history had an average out-of-pocket cost, which was closer to $750 per year. So even with insurance, surviving colon cancer can come with major extra costs, including things like clinic visits, follow-up tests, medication, and ongoing monitoring. This is one of the reasons screening is so important. When colorectal cancer is found early, it is often less expensive to treat and outcomes are usually better. It's also a reminder that prevention is not just about health, it can also protect families from major financial stress. Even after treatment, colorectal cancer survivors can face ongoing financial pressure, and this can affect basic health decisions. For adults ages 18 to 64 with a history of colorectal cancer, about 27% reported problems paying medical bills in the last 12 months. And this is higher than people without a cancer history. About 14% reported skipping medications, taking less, delaying, or not getting a medication because of the cost. And about 12% delayed medical care due to the cost. Something that really stands out is that it goes beyond healthcare. About 26% experienced food insecurity, meaning they had some level of difficulty affording enough food. And about 50% reported worrying about paying future medical bills if they got sick or have an accident. All right, now I'm going to turn things over to Andrea for more on reducing our risk.
Thank you, Charlie. So screening can catch cancer when it is treatable and less costly to treat. So as Charlie was talking about, in 2020, the cost of colorectal cancer care was $24.3 billion. And colorectal cancer has the second highest treatment cost of any cancer, accounting for 11.6 of all cancer treatment costs. And this is why screening is also critical in the fight against cancer, because screening can catch cancer when it's still treatable and when that cancer typically is less costly. That's the main thing, just make sure you get screened. So if you're at average risk, this screening should start at age 45. And for colorectal cancer screening, that term average risk has a very specific meaning. A person is considered average risk if they do not have major risk factors that increase the chances of developing colorectal cancer. So you might wonder what are those things that increase your risk? And so here are some. So if people who have one or more family members who have had colon or rectal cancer, screening recommendations for these people depend on who in the family had cancer and how old they were when they were diagnosed. Some people with a family history will be able to follow the recommendations for average risk adults, but others might need to get a colonoscopy and not any other kind of test more often, and possibly starting before age 45. And then there's the people who have had, if you've had certain types of polyps removed during a colonoscopy. Most of these people will need to have a colonoscopy again after 3 years, but some people might need to get one earlier than 3 years, depending on the type, size, or number of polyps. And then people who have had colon or rectal cancer. Most of these people will need to start having colonoscopies regularly about 1 year after surgery to remove the cancer, And other procedures like an MRI or proctoscopy with ultrasound might be recommended for people with rectal cancer, depending on the type of surgery they had. In addition to those things, people who have had radiation to the abdomen or the belly or pelvic area to treat a prior cancer, and most of these people will need to start having colorectal screening, a colonoscopy, or that stool-based screening, which I'll talk about in a second, at an earlier age, depending on how old they were when they got the radiation. And screening often begins 10 years after the radiation was given, or at age 35, whichever one comes last. And these people might also have to be screened more often than normal, such as at least every 3 to 5 years. And then a couple more that put you at higher risk would be people with inflammatory bowel disease. So that's like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. These people generally need to get colonoscopies, and that would be the test they want to get starting at least 8 years after they are diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. And follow-up colonoscopies should be done every 1 to 3 years, depending on the person's risk factors for colorectal cancer and findings on previous colonoscopies. And people with known or suspected to have certain genetic syndromes. These people generally need to have colonoscopies, and that's the recommended one for them. Screening is often recommended to begin at a young age, possibly as early as the teenage years for some syndromes, and need to be done much more frequently. Specifics depend on which genetic syndrome you have and other factors. And so if you're at increased risk, or if you have high risk of that colorectal cancer, or you think you might be, talk to your healthcare provider to learn more, and they can suggest the best screening option for you and determine what schedule you should follow based on your individual risk. And the good news, I would say, is that there's more than one way to get screened for colorectal cancer, and you and your doctor can decide what the best test is for you. So before we go into details on that, I want to give you a quick overview of the two main types of colorectal cancer screening tests. Everyone at average risk should start screening at age 45, while those who are at higher risk may need to talk to their doctor then about the earlier screening. So we have the first category, which is the stool-based tests. And these are done at home. They're usually lower cost, and they don't require that bowel prep or sedation. The main thing to remember is that they typically need to be done more often. And if anything comes back abnormal, the next step would be the colonoscopy. And then there's the second category, and those are the visual exam tests, and a colonoscopy falls in this one. They're performed at a doctor's office or at a health facility. These tests generally require that bowel prep, and the intervals are usually longer. A key point here is that a colonoscopy is the only test that can remove the polyps during the exam, which helps prevent cancer. So you can see how that could have its advantages. And the most important takeaway, though, from this slide is that screening starting age 45 can really help prevent colorectal cancer, and there are multiple options, so people can work with their healthcare provider to choose what's best for them. Okay, so next we'll get to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So we have the stool tests. So there's several options for colorectal cancer screening. We're just kind of briefly talked about those. And the American Cancer Society recommends these options for people who are at average risk. So they have no history of colorectal cancer in themselves or their family. So there's the stool-based tests, and they're used to screen for colorectal cancer, and they can be done at home and include the guaiac-based fecal occult blood test and the fecal immunochemical test. And samples of the stool, so the feces, then they're checked for blood, which might be a sign of a polyp or cancer. And then there's the stool DNA test. And it's a sample of stool is checked for certain abnormal sections of DNA from cancer or polyp cells. And this video will describe it even better than I can. We'll play that quick.
A stool DNA fecal immunochemical test, or sDNA FIT, is a stool or poop-based test that can be done with an at-home kit. This test checks for both blood and abnormal DNA in your stool. Blood may be a sign of polyps, cancer, or other conditions. Abnormal DNA can come from colon or rectal cancers and polyps. If you choose this option, you will need to collect a sample of your stool at home. You will get a box for this in the mail, which has detailed instructions on how to collect the sample. You then send it back to the lab for testing in the postage-paid shipping box. Here are some advantages of the sDNA FIT test. There are no medication or dietary restrictions needed to prepare for the test. The test is non-invasive and does not require medication to make you sleepy or involve any instruments inserted into your colon. You don't need to take a laxative to cleanse your bowel. Because you can collect the stool sample at home when it's convenient for you, you won't need to go to a clinic or hospital or take time off from work. Testing is required less often than with a FIT test because the sDNA FIT test detects more colorectal cancers and polyps. Here are the disadvantages of the sDNA FIT test. A single sDNA FIT test has a lower polyp and cancer detection rate than colonoscopy, so it needs to be done every 3 years. The test can have false positive results, meaning you might have an abnormal result even when you don't have cancer. False positive results are more common with the sDNA FIT than with FIT. If the test result is abnormal, a colonoscopy should be done to see if there is cancer in the colon or rectum. This might have out-of-pocket costs because some insurers may not completely cover the cost of follow-up testing. This test isn't likely to be a good option for people at higher risk for colorectal cancer, based on personal or family medical history. A stool.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we'll talk about the other section. So we have the stool-based tests, and then we'll move on to our other options. And I just wanted to clarify too, or switching to the next slide, but just these tests right here that we're talking about, those are testing mainly to find the cancer. And then these tests, they're more able to find the polyps that are before the cancer forms. So that's kind of an advantage of those. So here's these then. So these are tests then to detect the polyps and cancer in the colon. And they're sigmoidoscopy, colonoscopy, and the double contrast barium enema and CT colonography are good at finding cancer and those polyps. And polyps found before they become cancer can be removed. So these tests may help prevent colorectal cancer. This is why these tests are preferred if they are available and you are willing to have them. These tests are done in a clinic setting. So this video talks a little bit about more of them specifically.
A colonoscopy is a visual screening test that examines the inner lining of the colon and the rectum, the area where colorectal polyps and cancer begin to grow. This test is done in the doctor's office or outpatient procedure center. The doctor would look at the length of the colon and rectum with a colonoscope, a long flexible tube about the width of a finger, with a light and small video camera on the end. The tube is put in through the anus and goes into the rectum and colon. Special instruments can be passed through the colonoscope to biopsy or remove any suspicious-looking growths, such as polyps, if needed. If you choose this option, your doctor will give you specific instructions about how to prepare for the test. For example, you will need to take a prep, a preparation to ensure that your bowel is as empty as possible of any stool, so your doctor can see the entire inner lining during the test. You'll likely need to start this on the evening before the procedure. It may include drinking a strong laxative that is mixed with a large amount of liquid. This often results in spending a lot of time in the bathroom. Before the test starts, you will be given medications to help you relax and maybe even go to sleep until the examination is over. If a polyp is found, it may be removed and then sent to a lab to check if it has any areas that are cancerous. Here are the advantages of colonoscopy. When the prep is completed, it usually allows the doctor to see every inch of the colon and rectum where cancer or a polyp may be growing. On a single test, colonoscopy has a higher detection rate for colorectal cancers than stool-based tests like FIT and sDNA FIT. It also detects more polyps, which makes it the most likely type of screening test to prevent cancer from starting. If the doctor finds a polyp, it can usually be removed right away. If nothing abnormal is found, you won't need another colonoscopy or any other colorectal screening test for 10 years. Here are the disadvantages of colonoscopy. There are medication and dietary restrictions before the test. Bowel preparation is required before the test, which can be uncomfortable and unpleasant. Because a sedative is used to help keep you more comfortable during the test, you will need to arrange for someone to bring you to the appointment and take you home after the test. You may need to take a day off of work for the test. While the test itself may only take an hour, You may be in the recovery room waiting for the sedating medication to wear off for another hour or so. Colonoscopy is a safe procedure, but in rare cases there can be complications, such as reactions to anesthesia or the colonoscope going through the wall of the colon or rectum, which is called a perforation. Talk with your doctor about the risk of these and other possible complications. A colonoscopy is a
Thank you, Wanda. She's really good at doing the slides. Okay, so I just wanted to say we talked about the colonoscopy specifically there, but there are those other options. One of them is a CT scan, another one's an X-ray, another one is the sigmoidoscopy. That's the flexible lighted tube, and it's put into the rectum and lower colon to check. But the colonoscopy is the main one. And so just talk to your doctor about that. Now, we talked about the test, and I would love to quiz you guys, if it's okay. So we have the first one. Colorectal cancer can be prevented. True or false? If you just put in the chat, help us out. It'd be awesome. Just trying to see. There's a lot of information, so we're checking you. Yes, you guys got it. Yes. So it can be prevented. Yay. So that's good. Number 2, I only need to get tested for colorectal cancer if I have symptoms. Good job, you guys. Yes, that is false. You don't usually, might not even have symptoms. So yes, good job. Okay, number 3, most people should start colorectal screening at age 45. What do you guys think? 45? Yes, true. Good job. So it's like you could driver's license, certain age, you can rent a car at a certain age, and then colon cancer screening 45. Okay, colonoscopy is the only test used to screen for colorectal cancer in people who have no symptoms of it. So if you have no symptoms, can you only do the colonoscopy? Is that true or false? Yes, you guys are so good. False. Yes. Yes. So there's other options. So we have options. Just goal would be to get screened. Thank you guys. Good job. Okay, and then I just wanted to give a couple of quick resources. American Cancer Society. If you they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you know someone who has questions about cancer prevention, screening, or diagnosis, treatment options, support services, you can call that number at any time. Pretty awesome. It'll connect people to screening programs, financial assistance resources, transportation services, and reliable evidence-based information. And it's really important for individuals who don't know where to start or are concerned about the cost. So just know that you don't have to navigate this alone, and there are trained specialists who are available to talk through any questions that you have. And then just wanted to point out, we have at the University of Florida a research opportunity that's happening right now, and we would love to have you guys join. So it's called Eat Right, Screen Right, and it's an online nutrition and colorectal cancer prevention program. So if you enroll, you'll complete a quick questionnaire, interact with a short virtual assistant, and you'll get access to learning sessions on lowering colorectal cancer risk, including prevention behaviors, screening education recipes, and goal setting. So it's a great resource that you can use to build on what we're talking about today. And if you're interested, you can scan that QR code, or Tricia, thank you, just dropped it in the chat where you can click on that link. Yeah, and if you have any questions, or the contact information is right there, you can also ask any of us. And Patricia could get to us too. All right. And so lastly on my slides would just be that being diagnosed with cancer can feel overwhelming, not just for the person, but also for family and friends. So to help at this difficult time, UF IFAS Extension and the UF Health Cancer Center, that's pretty awesome, have worked together to develop a free online program designed specifically for people who are newly diagnosed with cancer. And it's also for people, it can be for friends and family too. I mentioned that, but just I looked at it and enrolled and did some of the modules, and it was really helpful just as someone who knows cancer, just for me. The program is called Taking Control of Your Cancer Diagnosis, and it offers 14 easy to follow online modules, and they cover important topics like managing stress, understanding treatment, dealing with finances, that's helpful to me, and avoiding misleading and predatory information. and they're represented by experts and can be done at your own pace whenever you're ready. And this way, people and families facing a new diagnosis have access to reliable, evidence-based information to guide them through the first steps of their journey. So if you know someone who's been recently diagnosed, this program is helpful. We'd love for you to share. And then you've got the link in there again for that. Yeah, just really great thing. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it on to Hillary, who's going to talk to you a little bit about nutrition, and then we'll get to physical activity. Thanks, Hillary.
All right, thank you, Andrea. So now we're going to move on to talking about nutrition and physical activity recommendations for cancer risk reduction. And research shows that 1/3 of the most common cancers can be prevented by lifestyle choices, including maintaining a healthy weight, increasing physical activity, and eating a balanced diet. And diet and physical activity habits are also related to 1/3 of all cancer deaths. The American Cancer Society has 4 guidelines that can help you live a healthier lifestyle and reduce your risk of getting cancer. And those guidelines are achieve and maintain a healthy weight, follow a healthy eating routine at all ages, not drinking alcohol, and being physically active. And we're going to go through each of these different guidelines in the upcoming slides. So the first recommendation from the American Cancer Society is to achieve and maintain a healthy weight throughout your life. This is important for children, teens, and adults. And the latest cancer research says that being overweight or obese increases the risk for 12 different types of cancer. And additionally, 14 to 20% of deaths from cancer are associated with weight. Weight is the weight you achieve and maintain with healthy eating and regular physical activity. So this doesn't mean that you need to be super skinny. In fact, being underweight may be just as unhealthy as being obese. People can be healthy in a range of body shapes, sizes, and weights. Regardless of your body weight, having fat around the waist seems to be particularly harmful. Ideally, if you are a woman, your waist size should be less than 35 inches. Men should aim to keep their waist size under 40 inches. And if you're interested, you can measure your waist at home with a soft measuring tape, much like you see in the pictures on the screen. It is important to know that there's no specific diet or exercise that will target your waistline, but regular exercise and a healthy diet should help to slim you down overall. The second recommendation from the American Cancer Society is to follow a healthy eating routine at all ages. So I say all ages, but what does that even mean? And we're going to talk about each of these points in more detail, but they are healthy eating should be a part of your routine. You should focus on eating plants in your diet, consuming less sugar in foods and beverages, and really getting back to the basics. So having fewer highly processed foods. It's important to eat healthy throughout our entire lives, and it's never too early or too late to take care of ourselves with a nutritious diet. So it may be hard to try new things sometimes, and this doesn't matter what age you are. Sometimes, trying new things can be difficult or we're unsure about it. So here's some tips to try new things. Start small. Offer yourself or try just a bite or two. A tiny taste feels a lot less overwhelming than a full serving. Pair new foods with something that's a favorite of yours. So maybe you're trying broccoli, or maybe you're having your child try broccoli for the first time. Maybe try it with a little bit of a light cheese sauce. Or maybe you're trying a new fruit. Pair it with your favorite type of yogurt. You want to repeat, repeat, repeat. It can take 8 to 15 tries before someone begins to like a new food. So don't give up after that first, oh, I don't know if I like it, or that first, no. Try it at least 8 to 15 times. Make it fun. So maybe try different colors of foods. Try the foods with a different dip. Maybe even try cutting it in different shapes if you're trying to have a child try something new. If you are trying to get kids to try something new, also let them help to prepare the food or maybe have them name the food in a silly way. That way it gives a little bit of buy-in and they'll be more interested in trying it. Then also model the behavior. So eat the food yourself and show enjoyment, show that you're liking the food. People are more likely to try something if they see others either doing it or they see others enjoying it. So I have a saying that I say, don't yuck my yum, because what I find yummy, right? Or, someone else might not, or maybe I don't like something, but if I say that out loud, others might not be wanting to try it. So don't yuck my yum. And then change the way that you're preparing the food. So try roasting or steaming, try the food raw, try blending it into smoothies. Sometimes a new cooking method is what really can make a difference. And then try making it a part of your routine. So healthy eating isn't about eating one particular food, but by having a healthy dietary pattern. And let's be honest, preparing food at home can take more time, but one thing we can anticipate is that we're going to need to eat every day, several times a day. So by establishing a routine of times that we might do some meal prep ahead of time, or make a short list of some foods or recipes that we'd like to make and have those ingredients available, we make it more likely that we're going to get those nutritious foods at mealtime. And, a lot of times when we don't plan for what we're going to eat for lunch or at work, or maybe we don't plan to make dinner, what happens is we might end up getting takeout or fast food because we just want to prepare a meal more quickly. And we end up skipping out on including a vegetable or something new or making some of those healthier choices. So now we're going to go over the different food groups. And when we talk about building a healthy routine, it's about regularly including foods from these groups in that routine. So for cancer risk reduction, the overall pattern is what's key. And so this means eating more plant foods like vegetables and fruits, choosing whole grains more often, being mindful of the types of proteins that we're eating, using healthy oils in place of solid fats, so oils like olive oil or avocado oil, and then reducing our added sugar intake. And what we really want to do is fill our plate with plant power. So we're going to go into each category further. So we're going to start with fruits and veggies. So it's recommended that you get 2 servings of fruit per day and 2.5 to 3 servings of vegetables every day. And you can always measure how much you eat at each meal, but there's another way to know whether you're getting enough fruits and veggies, and that's just to fill half of your plate with fruits and vegetables. And so, fruits and vegetables are really good for us. And another benefit is that when they take up half of our plate, they're leaving less space for other foods that aren't as nutritious. Another important benefit, especially when we talk about cancer prevention, is the color of our fruits and vegetables. So the different colors represent different plant compounds that are called phytochemicals, and they help us protect our cells. So for example, red foods like tomatoes contain lycopene, which has been studied for reducing risk of certain cancers. Orange vegetables like carrots and sweet potatoes contain beta carotene, which supports our immune health. And then dark green vegetables like broccoli and spinach contain compounds that may help protect against some cancers as well. So the main goal is to eat a variety of different colors. Fruits and vegetables may seem like they cost more, but they provide a variety of essential nutrients for our bodies. So for example, Florida strawberries in February and March are fresher, sweeter, and more affordable than when you buy them out of season in the summer. So you really want to try to buy produce when it's in season. And then you can also try to buy at farmers markets and roadside stands to get the freshest produce at good prices. And you don't forget that you can also purchase vegetables and fruits that are frozen or canned. You do want to choose vegetables that are canned, so you want to look for low sodium or no salt added. Make sure they don't have any sauces. And then choose fruits that are packaged in their own juice instead of heavy syrup. I will say if you cannot find vegetables that are canned in low sodium or no sodium added, one thing that you can do is you can open that can of vegetables, drain them, and then pour those vegetables in a colander and rinse them off with water. And that will help to rinse away about 30% of that sodium that's been added. So that is another option as well. But when you do buy canned, fruits and veggies, these options often last longer and they can reduce food and money wasted by fresh produce going bad, especially if you know you're not going to eat that fresh produce before, the expiration date. And then remember how we talked about having that routine earlier? A routine also supports saving money by reducing the amount of wasted food. So you may have seen the Fresh from Florida logo that you see on the screen here, and you may have seen it in different stores. There's also a calendar that goes along with the Fresh from Florida produce, and the calendar shows when different fruits and vegetables are in season here in Florida. So when you choose produce that's in season, it usually means that it's fresher, it tastes better, and it costs less. And that's because it doesn't have to travel as far to get to the store, and there's more of it available at the same time. Buying local, in-season produce also helps support Florida farmers, and it really just helps keep money within our communities. Another tip is to buy extra when produce is at its lowest price, like strawberries in the spring or sweet corn in the summer, and then you can freeze it or use it in recipes later. The handout that you see on the screen is going to be provided to you in email, so you will be getting this as well. And so now that we've talked about saving money on fruits and veggies, let's talk about our grains. So dietary fiber, which is often just called fiber, is part of foods that we can't digest. And there are two types of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber attracts water into the intestines, forming a gel, and it can help lower blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Foods that are higher in soluble fiber include whole fruits like apples, bananas, citrus fruits, and berries, vegetables like beans, peas, carrots, and sweet potatoes, and it's found in oats and oat bran. Insoluble fiber doesn't dissolve in the stomach, and so it helps move food through your digestive system and adds bulk to your stool, which helps to prevent constipation. Foods that are higher in insoluble fiber include nuts and seeds, vegetables like leafy greens, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, green beans, lentils, and celery, and whole grains like whole wheat and brown rice. Many vegetables and even whole grains contain both types of fiber. The recommended daily fiber amount really depends on your age and sex, and it can vary from 20 to 35 grams per day. But a good goal for most people is to try to eat at least 28 grams each day. When it comes to fiber supplements, studies on these supplements like psyllium fiber and wheat bran fiber haven't been shown to reduce colon polyps. And so the American Cancer Society just recommends getting your fiber through your diet from whole plant foods and not through supplementation. And grains are another part of eating a plant-based diet. So I'm going to throw a question to you all. What do I mean when I say grains? So what are some different grain foods? You're free to just type it in the chat. Quinoa, beans, oats, brown rice, 100% whole grain bread. All right, good. So grain foods are foods like breads, pastas, cereals, tortillas, rice, quinoa's in there. Awesome job, everyone. And so when we choose grains, some choices are better than others. And we want to make sure that we are choosing whole grains every day, like whole wheat bread, brown rice, oats, and whole wheat pasta. And when I say whole grains, or what we mean is whole grains have the entire grain kernel. And so you can see a whole grain kernel in that picture on the left. And it has three parts. It has the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. The bran and the germ contain fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And then you can see a refined grain on the right. Some common examples of refined grains are white rice, white bread, flour tortillas, and pasta. And so when a grain is refined, the bran and the germ are removed. So you could see that this means that whole grains have more fiber, vitamins, and minerals that may help to reduce cancer risk because, again, they have all parts of that kernel. Eating whole grains every day may decrease your chance of getting other chronic diseases as well, like diabetes. So we want to choose whole grains more often. And it's encouraged for us to at least make half of the grains that we eat whole grains. Now we're going to look at an example of how we can be sure that we are really getting a whole grain. The ingredients in the foods that we eat are listed by weight, so the healthiest ingredient should be listed first. When looking at whole grains, the first thing that we want to see is the word whole. It should be listed as the first ingredient or only after the words water or stone ground. And the example that you see on the screen, Sally's superfood multigrain bread is not whole wheat because it's missing the word whole in front of the word wheat. The main point is that not all wheat flour or multigrain flour is whole. And since whole wheat is the first ingredient in the second example of Mary's multigrain bread, this means it is the main ingredient. Therefore, this bread is the best choice. Other things that you want to look out for on the ingredients label are things like salt, sugar, and fats. And again, that's all going to be listed on that food label. Here's another example. So here is a yellow corn masa flour in the first example. So again, Maria's corn tortilla, and that is not a whole grain because it's missing the word whole. Again, the main point is that not all corn tortillas are whole grains. And since whole grain corn is the first ingredient in that second example, this means it is the main ingredient, and therefore that tortilla is the best choice. So, back to you all. What are we looking for when we read the ingredient list? What is the word that should be listed first when we're looking for? Yes, 100% whole or whole. Great job, everybody. You got it. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sherry, who's going to talk about proteins.
Thanks, Hillary. So we've talked about fruits, vegetables, and grains, and now we're going to move on to protein, and more specifically talking about plant-based protein because we want to limit red meat and processed meats. And that is because there is a very strong link between these and colon cancer specifically. So, because of these risks, the American Cancer Society recommends eating no more than 12 to 18 ounces of red meat per week. Red meat meaning any type of meat from mammalian muscle meat, such as beef, veal, pork, mutton, etc. The other part of the recommendation is to avoid processed meat as much as possible. This would be things like lunch meat and cured meats like ham or bacon. There is a strong link between eating these types of meat and getting colorectal cancer. So, when we say avoid processed meats, we mean that, according to the American Cancer Society, we should not be eating them at all because there is no safe threshold for reducing cancer risk. Now, how do we get that 12 to 18 ounces? Let's talk a little bit more. You'll see an example on this slide of a weekly meal calendar to show you what 18 ounces of red meat in a week might look like. The calendar on the top shows that you can have 3-ounce portions of red meat for 6 days a week with just taking 1 day off. Or you could do it another way. You can do the second calendar, which is just which shows that you can have an 8-ounce steak at a restaurant on a Sunday night, followed by a 6-ounce or 1/3 pound hamburger on a Tuesday, but then only having room for one more serving of red meat in the rest of that week. And that would be another way to get your 18 ounces. So, either having bigger portions of red meat on fewer days of the week or having red meat in smaller portions on more days of the week. Still, though, try to make that 8-ounce steak reserved for special occasions because research shows that eating a lot of red meat at one sitting may be just as bad as eating too much throughout the week. So, if you are eating larger portions of meat now, work on slowly decreasing your portions closer to that 3-ounce recommendation. So, what does that look like? 3 ounces of meat looks like a deck of cards, which would also be about the size of your palm. This is the ideal size for meat. So, for some people, this might be hard to accomplish, but you can gradually make the change. Slowly decrease the size of your portion by 1 index finger width per week until you finally hit the 3-ounce portion size. And again, you can be choosing skinless poultry, fish, seafood, or plant-based proteins instead of the red or processed meats. So as you cut back on your portion sizes of meat, consider having some meatless options. Remember, the American Cancer Society recommends a plant-based diet. So what are some of the plant-based protein sources that we talked about? Well, you see here on this slide some ideas to get more meatless meal options. You can see here burritos, adding chickpeas to a salad, stirring in peanut butter into oatmeal, etc. Has anyone done any of these ideas before, or any of these sound good that you might try at home? All right, good. Yeah, some peanut butter and oatmeal. That is a good one. And my 2-year-old loves it, and he can be a picky eater. Yeah, these are some simple ideas to cut back on animal-based protein and go with the plant-based proteins. Now, what about fat and sugar? When we talk about cancer risk reduction, we often get asked about fat and sugar intake. So we'll start with fat. We don't want to eliminate fat. In fact, it is necessary to the diet. However, the focus is on the type and overall pattern. The Harvard Healthy Eating Plate encourages healthy oils like olive oil. The unsaturated fats, like in olive oil, support heart health and reduce inflammation, which matters when we're thinking long-term disease risk. What we want to limit are the saturated fats and avoiding trans fats. Diets high in processed and high-fat animal foods are associated with increased risk for certain cancers, particularly colorectal cancer. And then with sugar, high intakes of that, especially from sugary beverages, contributes to excess calories, and excess calorie intake, of course, can lead to weight gain. And excess body weight is linked to at least 13 different types of cancer. Now, fats are an essential nutrient. As I said, it is needed in some amounts, but some fats are more nutritious than others. So calories from fat add up fast, and when using a lot of fat when cooking, it can make it a lot harder to control weight. If you must season with fats, it's a good guideline to use 1 teaspoon of fat per person or less if you're trying to lose weight. Choose lower fat cooking methods like baking, sauteing, steaming, poaching, or broiling. Additionally, too much of the wrong kind of fat increases your risk for heart disease and stroke. So instead of using solid fats like butter or bacon grease, switch to small amounts of liquid oils like olive oil. The monounsaturated fat found in the olive oils, as well as nuts and seeds, can help combat cell damage. And remember, even though these oils have more healthy fat, they still contribute about 100 calories per tablespoon. And if butter or bacon grease is essential to the dish you're making, try to use a little bit less. Now, sugars are a carbohydrate, and our bodies need carbohydrates for its main source of energy. There are sugars found in fruits, vegetables, and dairy, and we don't worry too much about these. They are found naturally in foods and come with a lot of vitamins, minerals, fiber, etc. But we do need to think about the sugars in that are added to our foods and beverages. Sugar itself does not cause cancer. However, eating foods and drinks with added sugar can contribute to weight gain. And as we said, the other slide, that weight gain can lead to 13 types of cancer. So foods and drinks that are high in calories but don't bring healthy nutrients like vitamins and minerals to them are a sign that it is too high in sugar. Sugar sweetened drinks are the #1 source of added sugar in the American diets. Small changes can make a big difference. So it's important to rethink your drink. Also, a lot of these sugary drinks do not keep us full, so it's easy to go overboard on calories in our meals or continuing to drink, such as having a second soda, if we still feel like we're not quite satisfied. So let's go over a few examples of what it means to rethink our drink. So for example, with sweet tea, making half your sweet tea unsweet can cut back on the amount of sugar. You might not be ready to go half and half right away, and that's fine. You can make an even smaller incremental change and just do 1/4 of your tea as unsweet, and then eventually working your way to get a fully unsweet tea. And the nice thing about this is you can do this as well at not just at home, but at a restaurant. And when making this simple switch, you are cutting out 5 teaspoons of sugar, which is about 80 calories. And you don't have to give up everything you enjoy, so you could also just cut down in portions, maybe getting a smaller cup when you are eating out on the go, and maybe adding a cup of water as well as with your sugary sweetened beverage. Doing that can lead to about 9 teaspoons less of sugar and 156 fewer calories. You could also swap out a Frappuccino for an unsweetened iced coffee with milk as another example for ways to get essential nutrients like protein and calcium while cutting down on the amount of added sugar in the beverage. Choosing a low-fat milk like skim or 1% would be another way to get less saturated fat. And then something like this, you might have seen these smaller orange juices at the store. You can do a simple switch and get the lighter version, and that would be 3 teaspoons less sugar and about 48 fewer calories. And then there's also the products out there like Mio, those water enhancers. That's another way to cut back on sugar. Or you can try fruits, vegetables, and herbs to flavor your water. If you think water is too plain for you and you miss having some kind of flavor with your beverages, those are some other ways that you can get still the flavor, but not the sugar and calories. So summarizing those examples you'll see here, remember, rethink your drink. You don't want to be drinking your calories. Remember, too much calories can lead to weight gain, which can lead to cancer risks. So simple swaps can lead to a big difference. So when we talk about getting back to basics with food, it comes down to a few simple habits. First, choosing more whole foods. So things like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains that are closer to their natural form. Cooking at home with these ingredients gives you more control over what goes into your meals, including the salt, sugar, and fat. Second, cutting back on fast food or frequent takeout. These meals are convenient, but are many times higher in calories, sodium, and added fats. When eating out, try to take an active role in your choices. You can look for the information, the nutrition information, or healthier menu options when possible. And lastly, add more plants to your meals. You don't have to go completely vegetarian, but just finding ways to get more plants on your plate, whether that's through vegetables, beans, fruits, or nuts. These foods are going to be packed with nutrients, fiber, and cancer-fighting compounds that support long-term health. So we covered a lot. Let's just click through. We got an overview of those food groups that we just talked about. So again, focus on fruits and vegetables, getting half your plate filled with them at each meal, choosing whole grains like whole wheat pasta and brown rice, choosing plant-based sources of protein more often, and limiting red meat and avoiding processed meat, and choosing plant sources of fats, replacing solid animal fats with liquid vegetable oils like olive oil. And then Patrick will cover the next section on exercise.
Thanks, Sherry. So the other key component to reducing your risk of developing colorectal cancer is getting adequate physical activity. The recommendation is to get 150 minutes of activity per week, and there are many different ways that you could do this. So you can get this activity through structured exercise routines like running or taking a group fitness class or lifting weights, or it can be simply just things that you do around the house. So it could be taking a walk during your break at work. It could be dancing with your kids, doing any sort of yard work or lawn work or whatever it might be, but those are different ways to get 150 minutes of activity. So I'm very curious if you could type in the chat, what are some ways that you enjoy being active? The key is to find activities that you like to do and things that you're going to stick with. So go ahead and put in the chat. I'm very curious. So we got dancing, bike commuting. That's awesome. That's really good. Right up my alley. Running and swimming, also fantastic. Walking, hiking, biking, yoga, very good. Yard work, yeah. So even you can see that we have a wide range, right? Structured activities, but also a lot of things that you can do that aren't as structured, that are just regular physical activities, like those yard works and those dance routines, whatever you might do that you might enjoy. But these are all great activities of ways to get physical activity. And just remember, your goal is about 150 minutes per week. All right, so we have covered a lot today. So let's go back over everything that we've discussed in the course of this webinar. We do have one more thing coming, so hang tight. But just remember that 1/3 of cancers that occur each year can be prevented by lifestyle choices. The American Cancer Society has some specific recommendations to achieve a healthy lifestyle and lower cancer risks. Can anybody remember what our 4 recommendations are? So we talked about them earlier, but does anybody remember what are the 4 recommendations? You could just put one in if you want. All right, so the very first one is to achieve a healthy weight by losing weight or maintaining current body weight. The second is to eat a plant-based diet with lots of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Don't forget about limiting red meat or processed meats and choosing plant-based sources of protein as well. Number 3 is to limit your alcohol intake because we don't know the safe level for cancer prevention. And then finally, number 4, the one I just covered, be physically active whenever possible. Even small changes throughout the day can really add up and be effective. One other thing to mention is that we're going to be sending a short survey by email after this session. It's only going to take a few minutes to complete, but it really does make a big difference for us. First, it helps us understand what kinds of classes and topics you'd like to see in the future. We truly use your feedback to help plan for upcoming programs. It also lets us know if you've learned something new today and if you plan to use what you've learned. That helps us by measuring the impact of our workshops. Your responses are also going to help us improve. So tell us what worked well, what didn't work well, and next time we're going to improve from that. And then finally, the evaluations that we send out are really important for our funding. So they help us to show that our programs are valuable and effective and making a difference in the community. So please keep an eye on your email and just take a few minutes to fill out the survey when you get it. We really appreciate that feedback. But don't go anywhere because next we're going to turn it over to an awesome cooking demonstration So I really think you all are going to enjoy this. We're going to learn how to make some healthy recipes.
Hello, my name is Amber Daniels. Can you hear me? Beautiful.
Perfect,
I think you
thank
can see me now, and hopefully you can hear me, but my name is Amber Daniels. I'm from Sarasota County Extension. I'm hanging out with Josh today here at Hillsboro, and we have a really fun recipe for you today. And hopefully, this is a really important topic today. We want to help bridge the information to, how we can use day-to-day choices to improve our health and optimize our health outcomes, reduce our risk for cancer. And so we're going to do this today with a really fun recipe that we found fresh from Florida, which you learned about earlier today. You probably already knew about it. But we have the key lime crunch lunch wrap. So it's something that you can throw into your lunch as a fun, new flavor twist. So I'm going to go through all of the ingredients. Josh is going to help me make this today. So we're going to use basically the recipe from Fresh from Florida, which was the key lime coleslaw, Florida key lime coleslaw. And we're just going to elevate it into a wrap that's in a whole grain tortilla so that we get our dietary fiber in. And we're going to start, it's such a beautiful, colorful rainbow. We did it in arc on purpose for that reason. We're missing a couple colors, but most of them are here. We got our carrots, which are really high in beta carotene. It's going to help with our vitamin A, defend our bodies, especially our eyes and our skin. We have the red and purple category with our red cabbage and purple cabbage and red onions, which have a lot of antioxidant power with anthocyanins. And we have our green cabbage, which is rich in lutein, also going to help our immune defense. We have a little bit of lime juice here. Actually, this is a half a cup. These are 2 cups each of the cabbage, a half a cup of red onion. We have an ounce of lime juice. Key limes, when I moved to Florida, I thought they were going to be really easy to make for a key lime pie. And actually, they're very small, they're very hard on their skin, and it's kind of hard to press. So I did take the easy way out today in planning for key lime juice rather than using it fresh. But we do have cilantro fresh from the garden here at Hillsboro. Thank you for that, Josh. And cilantro has some fiber in it, but also has lutein, beta carotene. So it's not just a garnish, it's really good for your health. We have Greek yogurt here, which we're using to substitute for mayonnaise. So we're bringing down the fat content and then elevating the protein content. Here we have ground mustard, or it's Dijon mustard, and that is a half of a tablespoon, and that's going to help with flavor, but it's also going to help as an emulsifier for our dressing. And then we have about a half a tablespoon of an all-purpose seasoning. You could use a Southern-themed all-purpose seasoning here. So that's going to amount to our coleslaw produce here and our dressing. So we're going to throw this together, right, Josh? All right. So I'm going to put together the produce. So here's our carrots. It's going to be so easy. So a couple things, if you have a food processor at home, this is something you could throw in the food processor and shred all of these items, but who wants to clean that, right? So you could chop it up if you want to, but sometimes that's a lot of work and hard on our hands, kind of a mess. So if you wanted to, you could also just purchase all of the items pre-shredded, and that could be a great way to go about it. So we have, and I do have this guy for the dressing piece. So if you wanted to start putting those guys together, and so now I have all the produce, and all of these items are fresh from Florida. They're in season, so you can still find these at your farmer's market. And I'm going to give that a quick toss, and we have a beautiful color right there. I don't see those carrots. Let's bring them up. We got to toss this correctly. Get that vitamin A going. All right. So lots of cruciferous vegetables in here. So Josh is going to be working on that, and I'm going to warm up our tortilla, because when we make wraps, if we warm them up for a moment, it will actually help them fold without tearing a little better. So I'm just going to put that on my burner right there and not forget about it. And Josh is just mixing up our dressing. And that was a pretty quick and simple thing to put
Very easy to
together,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you could just pour it right in here. It's not going to pour well, so probably using your spatula there. And then we can just toss that all together.
Very creamy.
Yeah, absolutely. You could reserve some. I don't think we're going to do it today, but you could reserve some and kind of put it like on the side of the tortilla to kind of help be the glue to hold it together for the wrap. That could be a possibility. But if you want to give that a good toss while we're waiting for our tortilla, and I'm making him do all the arm work here. But you could do a lot of different things with this. So there's different themes. You don't have to do a Florida key lime. And sometimes people don't really like cilantro because it tastes like soap. So if you're a super taster and you don't like cilantro, maybe try like a Brussels sprouts with pomegranate seeds and Parmesan shavings. Maybe try a pineapple and mint. That would be a really fun flavor. If you don't like the cilantro in this version, you could change to parsley. So you could really make this versatile, and we're going to show you that how this works. Thanks so much, Josh.
What are some things we could do to add a little bit of crunch?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. So you could add crunch using pepitas. Pepitas are different kinds of nuts or seeds, but pepitas are fun. They're little pumpkin seeds. So that's something you could easily add in for healthy fats and bringing up that protein amount while getting some crunch in your lunch.
Awesome.
Because we don't want boring lunches, right? So we're just going to take a little bit here and we're going to kind of put it more towards the middle of our tortilla. I hope we can all see that okay. And, you know, some people aren't used to doing the wraps and they feel like they're not great at doing this process. So if you are a beginner and you don't want to try this, maybe a whole wheat pita half might be a good first step for you. But we're going to go ahead and try to wrap this. And so we're going to tuck in these sides right here like so. And then we're going to fold over the top and just roll it like this. And as you could tell, like there's an opportunity here to add a little bit more. Is there some? Maybe we can add a little bit in there. Okay, so that's kind of our little glue that's going to help hold it together. And there we go. And it didn't tear because we heated it up. So we have a cute little lunch box so that you can see what this might look like at your desk or in your lunch pail. We threw some strawberries in there too, just for some color and fun, just give you some ideas about how this could play out. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this at an angle. And you can see how pretty it is. You got all your beautiful colors in there. Great job, Josh.
You did the work.
So we're going to put this in our little lunch container, and that looks so nice. Even for your kids, for, you know, whoever you're making lunches for, or just yourself, but that's a really fun little lunch. So we call that the Key Lime Crunch lunch wrap, and we're going to wrap it up and send it on over to our other kitchen with Suzanne.
Hello, everybody. I hope we've learned a lot. Yes, hello. All right, so we've learned about a little bit of a lunch hack. Now we're going to move on to something that's more of dinner. So I have all my ingredients prepped out right now. So we're going to start off with getting our pan warmed up. And so when we think about colorectal cancer and specifically dietary patterns, I personally think about fiber and how we can get more of it. So the goal of these recipes is taking foods that you probably already eat and then just adding a little bit more fiber to them. So this recipe today is focusing more on pasta and pasta sauce. So I already have my pasta made. And this recipe can be as simple or as complicated as you want. You can use a low sodium jarred like marinara or red sauce. You can use fresh tomatoes instead of the canned ones. Or you can put everything in a crock pot before work, come back, blend it, and you'll have a nice, popping over here, a nice sauce to come back to. All right, our pan is heated up. I'm going to put in our kale, which has been blanched, which means it has been boiled and then put into a cold water bath to stop the cooking. And the blanching process really just makes that kale vibrant. You see how green it was when I put it in? All right, put my dirty dishes back here. Since everything's been pre-cooked, I'm going to just put everything in, blend it, and we'll simmer. We have our beans. You can use any white beans, really. I have cannellini beans here. You can use butter beans. There's like a white. There's another beans. You can use garbanzos. Just use any beans you like. Just use some beans. Beans go in. Those have been rinsed and drained. And if you can't find a reduced sodium or no sodium added product, rinsing is a great way to remove a lot of that sodium. We have our carrots. I bought the matchsticks one because I was lazy and didn't want to grate them, but you can always buy whole carrots and grate them. And make sure you get everything out of there. We have our onions. Our zucchini. And last but not least, our garlic. Give that a good toss and let that warm up a little bit. Woo! This pan cooks things really fast. And then our crushed tomato sauce. Mix that together, and then we're gonna blend it. Now, I like using an immersion blender, but you can also use a standard, like, table style blender. Ooh. And if you're seeing that it's not blending as well as you like, you can always just go to your sink and grab some more water. You can also use pasta water as well. There we go. Now, the texture of this is up to you, so you can leave it as chunky or as smooth as you would like. Good stir. I'm going to leave mine a little bit more on the chunky side so we can kind of see all of the vegetables that we have going on. All right. I'm going to let that simmer for a little bit. But while it's simmering, we're going to talk about ingredients that are within it. All right. So we have our kale, which has antioxidants that helps protect our cells from damage from free radicals. That could be like UV. We have our tomatoes, which have vitamin C, vitamin A, beta carotene, and lycopene, which is a compound that has antioxidant, anti-cancer, and heart protective benefits. Next up are carrots, which we know people always say carrots are good for our eyes. They're also good for our skin, and that's because of the beta carotene, which is also found in tomatoes. So beta carotene is converted into vitamin A within the body. All right, and then beans. Beans, 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 beans. Most people don't eat enough beans. They are a great source of protein. They're also an inexpensive version of protein, and my grandma gave me a book from like the 1970s about like a meat stretcher book. And a lot of those recipes include adding beans to your meat. So They're protein source, inexpensive, and can stretch your food to make them last a little bit longer or be more bulk. And then last but not least, garlic. Not only is garlic used to ward off vampires, but it also has a sulfur compound, which gives it that smell that is anti-carcinogenic, it is anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial, which includes antifungal, antibacterial, and antiviral. However, you're not stuck to just the vegetables I talk about today. You can use a lot more, like bell peppers. You can use eggplants or aubergines if you're British. There's so many others that you can use. Whatever you have in the fridge that really pairs well. Like even like what is it? Squash or pumpkin, especially during when you get to that Halloween spooky season. All right. Next, as it's simmering, it's really going now, I'm going to add in my spices. For this demo, I am using dried spices. You can use fresh. The conversion is super simple. If you're using fresh, you'll need a little bit more than dried spices, which I've had their water removed, so they're more concentrated in their flavor. Ooh. Oh, I got people coming to the door wondering what's cooking right now. This is good. Oh, it smells so good. And then you can adjust for your seasonings afterwards. You can add a little bit of garlic and onion powder. I know I usually enjoy having that in there. And then you'll mix it in with your pasta. I know some people like to keep them separate, so I'm just going to show you what the sauce looks like. Let's put them into our bowl right here. Like I said, I left it a little chunkier, but you can always blend it in and you can always switch up the ratios. If you want it to be more red, you can add more tomatoes. If you want it to be more green, you can add different things. But this is what come around and show you a nice up close and personal look. So this is what we're working with. A little bit, I can always blend it more, always blend it less, but that's what that is. And now we have our dinner. What about dessert? Well, for dessert, we're having brownies. I know. Now, this is not like an everyday, turn this down. This is not an everyday dessert, but it is a great way to incorporate fiber and protein into like a really comforting dish. I know when I was in high school, even in middle school, I would always bring like brownies to my friends just as a way to be like, hey, I'm your friend. So this is super easy. I'll come up and close. It's basically two ingredients. You have a thing of boxed brownies. I use Ghirardelli, whatever brand really works. And then a can of beans that I blended up just like I did with my sauce. You mix them together. You can add a little bit of coffee powder, instant coffee powder, for more of those health benefits. But yeah, you can't tell there's a single black bean in here at all. It just tastes like a brownie and it's super delicious. The last time I made these, some of my coworkers had probably almost half the dish by themselves. So if you have somebody who's a picky eater, maybe try this. But that's all I have for this food demo. I'm going to send it back to the rest of the group for final thoughts and questions. Can you add pasta to this? Yes, I have pasta that I will add to this right after we're done. Are there any other questions for this food demo? My email. My email will be, I can provide my email. Yes, in email afterwards, yes. how do you mix the beans and the brownies? What you do is you just blend your beans up. I don't have a bowl right now, but basically you'll blend up your beans until they're a thin paste. Add your mixin and just kind of keep mixing and folding until they're well incorporated. You do bake them according to the box. You will get recipes for these in an email, so don't worry. But yeah, bake them according to the box. Usually is about 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes, depending on the box brand that you use and your oven settings. All right, I think that was all the questions I saw. Did I miss any?
No, I think that was all. I checked it back.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys fill out that evaluation. It does help us a lot.
Yeah,
I hope you enjoy.
I'm putting the link there. The link's in now.
Thank you.
And we will be sending the recipes and the evaluation and the resources that we talked about today with a follow-up email. Thank you so much for joining Cooking for a Lifetime of Cancer Prevention, focusing on colorectal cancer. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.